So good morning, good afternoon. Thank you everybody for joining me today for our iMeet Central University course. We're going to be talking about design and layout. This is a 201 course meant for those of you who are already familiar with using iMeet Central. Some of what we're going to talk about today is kind of theoretical, but the idea is through proper design and layout decisions, we can help motivate adoption and drive value out of the tool. The objective for our course today is to understand why good design choices in iMeet Central are important, and to learn how to make high-level design decisions that change the look and feel of your account. If you have an eye for design, you've probably noticed already that there really isn't a whole lot that you can change in iMeet Central. But there are some things that we can do as it relates to design decisions. So before we dive in, let's just first ground ourselves. What is design in iMeet Central? Design in iMeet Central is making intentional, goal-oriented decisions about the features enabled in iMeet Central and making them visible to users in a way that serves their process. And there are really, in my opinion, there are three things that you should do to design well. First is to build the platform to fit your process. It means not turning on all the bells and whistles. It means going into workspaces and turning off tabs that maybe you aren't using, and really trying to frame the configuration around how you want the tool to be used. And the second trick is to keep it simple. Of course, that's related to the first one, but keeping it simple means eliminating noise. It means looking at the platform and identifying areas where you just don't really need users to be bothered by something. Maybe it's a tab, or it's an application block, or a folder. This is a common one. I see configurations with dozens of folders and they aren't being used. Delete them. If you're not using folders, get rid of them. They're just adding clutter and noise. So keep things simple. And the third trick to designing well is to respond to feedback. We like to think that the design decisions we make are great. And we like to think that the layouts we create are helping people find stuff. But if we're not asking our users what their experience is like, we may actually be making life more difficult for them than we know. So be open to feedback from your team. Be honest with your team and let them know, hey, I redesigned this Home tab layout. What do you think of it? And respond to that feedback. You'll be amazed how you can improve your relationships with your employees and your partners and your team members if you respond to their feedback and you implement changes based on their input. Now, there are two perils of bad design that I want to highlight. The first peril of bad design is this: making things more complex rarely ever solves the problem. If you have a design in place and your team is having a hard time finding things, sometimes adding more to the system makes it more difficult. Sometimes the trick is to actually cut the stuff that they don't need to see. So an actual conversation I had about a year ago working on a design is we were trying to frame in or bring in a list of things. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was asked, well, what if I just use an iframe? Iframe is advanced HTML code, and it would have made the configuration so much more complex, and we said, no, let's not do that. So keep it simple. The second peril of bad design is kind of a weird one, but it's this. Teasing end users with functionality is a slippery slope. So if you're currently reviewing the way that your platform is designed, if you're thinking about the look and feel, and you decide that you want to go gather some feedback from your team, and you're maybe having like a Q&A session to identify how to make things better, be very careful about asking questions like, do you guys want to use a database? Or do you think that changing the colors would be better? When you start letting your team members know the types of things you can change before they understand the value of those changes, you might paint yourself in a corner, and suddenly you've got people saying, oh no, we definitely need more folders, like we got to have 50 folders. And it's like, no. So be careful about having conversations internally. Ask your users if there are things about the tool they don't like, what are those things that they don't like? And ask them what it is that they need out of the platform. And then you be the decision maker on what types of features to enable. Why is design in iMeet Central so important? Well, it does three things. It increases usability, it promotes adoption, and it drives value. Usability is really kind of based around 5 things that I know of. Usability is related to learnability. So a tool that is very usable is one that is easy for users to learn. They look at a home tab and their eye immediately goes to the Files and Discussions tab. You don't have to spend hours and hours training a team member how to use it if it's designed well. A usable system is efficient. It is a system that reduces clicks. So when I have accounts ask me, how do I improve my configuration, one of the first things I try and identify is what people are clicking on. If it takes somebody 10 clicks to do something and we can do it in 2, that's a great improvement over the design. A usable system is memorable. It's like riding a bike. If you log in and you work with it on Monday and then you don't use it for the rest of the week and you come in the next week, you should be able to find where you were pretty quickly. And this has to do a lot with reducing noise. Systems that are really simple and streamlined are easy to remember. A usable system results in fewer errors, so fewer whoopses. This is a really great opportunity for you as administrators to identify where you can improve the design. If you notice people are making the same mistake over and over and over again, that's a design decision that you can implement. Maybe there's a task that people never complete. Maybe you don't need it. Get rid of it. Maybe people are uploading files into the wrong folders. Maybe you need to rethink your folder structure. So look where your users are making mistakes and create design decisions to reduce the frequency of those mistakes. The last factor in usability, a system that's very usable, is one that's satisfying. It's enjoyable to use. There are places, and I'm going to show you in a minute, where you can embed images and graphics and colors. And if you can make your site more visually appealing, especially if you're working with creatives, because we all know how creatives are, if you can make the system pop a little bit and put colors in places, you're going to find that your team starts using it a little bit more because they just like it. The second thing that a good design is going to help you with is it's going to help drive adoption. So all those 5 things that I just mentioned, they all feed into user adoption, right? A system that is well designed is a system that your team likes to use. If you are suffering from adoption issues, if you have 50 licenses and all 50 of them are being used and you've got only 20 people who log in, and you're like, I got 30 people who don't use the tool, it's possible, maybe even likely, that they're not using the tool because they just don't like it. And that fits into design decisions. It's good to go talk to those people and say, why aren't you using iMeet Central? And they may have some really interesting things to say. Well, I don't use it, I don't know where to find tasks. Or I don't use it because there isn't a calendar. And these are things you can solve for by adjusting the design. The third thing you get out of great design is you get value. So how many of us dread being asked this question? How many of us have ever had to use Microsoft Excel to manage a project? It's not easy, especially if you're changing dates. In fact, it kind of stinks. A system that's well designed is one that's going to give you a lot of value. And so when you're thinking about all these things like user adoption and people having issues or making mistakes, all of it rides up to value, right? We're all paying for this thing. We want to get value out of it. Good design decisions make life easier. It adds value to the tool. So these things are related. Usability drives adoption, and user adoption drives value. The more people use the tool, the more you're getting out of it. People use the tool because the system is usable. So at the crux of this whole thing is good design. In iMeet Central, there are only a few places where we can make smart design decisions. The first is in company look and feel. As a company administrator, we can make a couple small changes that make the system look a little bit nicer. We can modify our Workspace home pages by using what are known as application blocks. Workspace administrators can make these changes, but we can template these home page designs and clone workspaces when we want to create consistency across the system. These three areas are where we can spend our time rethinking design. Those three areas kind of break down as follows. In company look and feel, you can manage your company colors, you can change your branding, you can update templated email notifications. You can also update and use what is known as our custom navigation tool to make information more readily accessible. And I'm going to show you all this in a moment. We're going to get into the system in a moment. The Workspace homepage allows you to customize landing pages based on content. So if you wanted to create a home tab that just has a calendar on it, if that's what your team really needs, then we can do that. We can also customize the tabs in a workspace. So if you're using a workspace to store files, but you're not using a workspace to create tasks, turn that project management tab off. Just get rid of it. Your users don't need to see it if you're not using it. And then the third thing here is workspace templates and cloning. You can create a template out of a workspace based on a project type. So let's say you have projects that are they're all about tasks. That's it. I create a workspace and I just need to create a bunch of tasks. Well, we can template that workspace layout. And anytime you need to create a new workspace, you can use that template. Maybe it's called like the tasks template. And I'll show you how to do that too. So let's actually dive in. So I'm going to leave this slide here. We'll come back to it. Let's actually get into the tool and start talking about those three areas. So the three areas, again, are company setup, the ability to modify workspace layouts, and the ability to create templates out of those workspaces. So I'm going to log in to an account here called Vacao. And if you've been in iMeet Central University before, you're probably starting to get familiar with this because this is what I always use. All right, so company setup. Where can we make design decisions in company setup? Well, if you're a company administrator and you go to the little cogwheel icon up here and you come down to company setup, there's a tab in here called look and feel. And in this look and feel tab is where you can update your company logo, which is this little graphic up here in the top left corner. The dimensions for your company logo have to be a 4:1 ratio. So it says here 200 by 50, but if you want to create an image that's 800 by 200, that works too. And whatever images that you create, you just click on select file and you pick a file from your computer. So make sure you update your company logo. And the next thing is if you go to the colors area, brand the account with your company colors. So Vacao's company color is this kind of weird baby blue. So you can update the top bar background color here to be sort of whatever. Maybe your company color is like bright red. I don't know. Sure. Holy smokes. That works. You can also change the button background color. So this little button right here, I can change that too. I can say, let's make all of my buttons bright green. So again, these are aesthetic things, but what they do is they make the site more pleasing. If your team members log in, they feel like they're almost like they're home, right? The custom navigation tool allows you to create shortcuts to various pages, files, or workspaces, or even reports. If you have a team member who says, I don't like using iMeet Central because I feel like I have to click forever to get into my workspace. If it's a workspace that your team uses all the time, well, you can create a shortcut to that workspace using this custom navigation tool. When you have custom navigation turned on, it adds a menu up here in the top right corner that is totally customizable. If you don't have this feature turned on, you're just going to see your name and you're going to see the Create button. But this little thing here that says Shortcuts is the custom navigation tool in Company Setup. You can call this menu whatever you want. Right now it's called Shortcuts, but I can change it. I can call it Bookmarks. Click on Save, give this a refresh, and now it says Bookmarks. You can use this menu to do whatever you want. Now, it's not cascading, so all the options that you add, they're just going to appear like in a list format. But here's a common example. I like this one. I've seen some people use this drop-down menu for links to reports. So let's see here. I'm going to go in and see if I've got any saved reports. I do. Let's use this marketing team workload report. I have no idea what this is. Wow. Okay, that looks great. I'm going to copy the link for this report. So I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go into Company Setup. And this is called Marketing Team Workload. I'm going to go to Look and Feel. I'm going to go to Custom Navigation, and I'm going to add an option to my little drop-down picker here. I'm going to click the plus button. There we go. And I'm going to call it Team Workload. Sure. And I'm going to paste the link to that report in there, and I'm going to click on Save. Now when a person logs in, if they say, you know, I just need to find the team workload report. That's it. I don't care about workspaces. No problem. Log in, click the bookmarks bar in the top right corner, and look, there's your team workload report. You click on team workload, and you're in the report. 2 clicks. Remember, we're trying to reduce clicks. 2 clicks. Versus, heaven forbid, someone should have to click 3 times by going into the reports list. But it's there. So I've seen this drop-down thing. Again, it's called Custom Navigation, used to keep track of reports. You can also, if you've got like a couple core workspaces that you want people to get to, you can do that as well. Now this is slightly different than, if I go to the dashboard, it's slightly different than this Company Shortcuts menu, which I'll show you how to update in a moment. The Company Shortcuts list over here on the right points you toward workspaces, and it can only point toward workspaces. It also disappears as soon as you leave the dashboard. So this custom navigation tool is great because it can point to anything and it's always visible. So I go back into Company Setup and I go to Look and Feel. There are a couple other things that you can use in here. This Images menu allows you to upload images to our style sheet library. If you are CSS savvy, or if you've got a local developer and they ever asked, is there a way that I can host some images and refer to them using style sheets? The answer is yes. You can upload those images here. And these are stored in this root address. So this is an advanced trick that you can use if you ever wanted to embed images in weird places. You can do that. The nice thing about using this ability, this tool, is that you don't need to host the image in a workspace where people can get to it and mess with it. These images are hosted at your company level, which is like a really top secret file storage area. All right, so those are the company settings that we can play with. Now let's talk about workspaces. I'm going to go into my workspaces list, and I'm going to go into a workspace group, and I've got one here called Design Layout 1. This is a workspace with a custom Home tab design. And you can customize your Home tab to do whatever you want it to do. A workspace administrator can change the Home tab layout by clicking on the Options button in the top right corner of the Home tab and clicking on Customize. The Home tab editor uses our WYSIWYG editor. WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. And you've got all of these little formatting tools here across the top. So you can make things bold or underlined. You can color things, like maybe I want this to be, I don't know, blue. There we go. So again, you can play with colors and whatnot. And you'll notice that the Home tab is arranged in a table. If you look closely, you'll see these little dashed lines. This table has a couple columns and a couple rows, and in the table I have inserted application blocks. Application blocks are widgets that will pull data from various places in your workspace and display it on your Home tab. So in the Workspace editor, or the Home tab editor, it looks kind of drab and boring, but if I click on Cancel and I go back, you'll see that the Home tab has actually got all this cool content. These are all application blocks driving the content on this Home tab. They're dynamic, meaning when a person creates a new discussion, it will appear over here in the Discussions application block. If I add a person to the workspace, their little avatar will appear here in this application block. I don't need to manually update any of this stuff. It all just pulls data from across the workspace. So if I go back into Options Customize, and I ever said, you know, I really want a calendar on my Home tab, that's not too hard to do. What I'm going to do is, let's see, I'm going to put a calendar on the top. So I'm going to come over here to the top left corner, and I'm just going to left click, and it places my cursor there in front of the table, and I'm just going to use my keyboard to be like, yep, there I am. So I got my cursor where I want it. And to insert an application block on the Home tab, you're going to go up here to where it says Insert More, click on that button, and it shows you all the different application blocks you can insert. And I'm going to go down to Project Management, but you can see there are all these different categories. You can show like a list of database records on your Home tab if you want. You can show a list of folders. You can create a discussion application block using the social category, but I'm going to go into Project Management, and I'm going to pull in an application block called Overdue Upcoming Activities, and I'm going to make it a 7-day block. It will show all upcoming activities in this workspace, but if I really wanted to, I could show it for the current user in all of the workspaces that they have access to. This is really useful. If any of you guys have ever thought like, man, I want to create a custom dashboard, you can do it. You create a workspace and you call it Dashboard, and then you can use these application blocks that pull data from all workspaces, which are kind of cool. But I'm just going to do upcoming for this workspace. And I'm going to click on Insert, and there's my application block. Woo! Pretty ugly. But if I click on Save, and I go back to the actual Home tab, look at that. I've got a 7-day running calendar now across the top of the workspace. Now, these decisions should be based on use case, right? I mean, you saw all the options here for these application blocks. I can create the craziest Home tab you've ever seen. But what I need to be doing is making design decisions that are based in my use case. So if you saw this Home tab and you were brand new and you never knew what iMeet Central was, and you came here, what does this Home tab tell you is important? Well, with a big calendar here across the top, I would assume that the most important thing for me is knowing what's coming up in the next 7 days. So it's like a forecasting layout. I come to the Home tab, I know what's happening for the next week. The next most important thing is my files. So this is a files application block that takes me directly to folders in the Files and Discussions area. And then the least important thing to me is the discussions. And why is that? Well, our eye tracks from left to right and top to bottom if you are in a European sort of like style language country, right? If you read left to right, top to bottom, your eye goes left to right, top to bottom. Of course, there are plenty of countries and people who might interpret differently. Some people start in the top right and they work their way to the bottom left, but this is how I see it. So top left to bottom right, most important thing to least important thing. It's important to keep your workspace simple. Kelly just asked an awesome question. Thank you. How do you remove application blocks that you don't want? So it's important to keep things simple. This, to me, is kind of crazy. I'm going to get rid of the calendar, so I'm going to go back to Options Customize. Deleting an application block, it's just like deleting text. place your cursor here in the editor. So I just clicked right here, so there's my cursor, and if I just go backspace, 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 click on save, there it goes. So you can just backspace or delete, however you want to delete these things. I've also, in the customized layout, I have highlighted things. If I just like click and drag, I can highlight them, and then I can press backspace and get rid of them. Another question coming in from Rachel. If I don't have the customize option, does that mean it has been restricted to a company administrator? It means that it has been restricted to a workspace administrator. Only workspace admins can make changes to the layout on the Home tab. By default, company admins are workspace admins in most workspaces. But if you don't see that customize option, it means that you're not a workspace administrator. But to your point, Rachel, if you know your workspace admin and you want to go to that person after this class and say, hey, let's play around and rearrange our Home tab, I got some ideas, ask for the workspace admin permission, and you'll be able to go in here and play with all this stuff. All right. So we know that we can play around with our application blocks. Most workspaces are arranged using a table. And one of the nice things about tables in iMeet Central is that if you right-click in the table, you can get some additional features. For example, if I click on Table Properties, I can come in here and I can mess with things like border. So I'm going to go ahead and do a border of 1, and the border color is going to be, this is going to be weird. It's going to be pink. I'll click on OK. I'll click on Save. And so now I've got a fancy pink border around my Home tab layout. Ooh! But hey, maybe you like that. That's cool. Some other things that you can do by right-clicking in the table is if you right-click in here, you'll see if you hover over these options, cell, row, and column, this is where you can go in and say, I want to insert a row before or after. Maybe you want to cut a row and paste it somewhere else, you can do that. And same with column. If you ever want to insert or remove a column, you can do that all here by right-clicking on the table. Now, for those of you who know some HTML and you just want to get into the thick of it, click on the HTML button up here at the top of the WYSIWYG editor and have a ball. If you know how to write HTML, you can go in here and you can play all day with your alignments, your column widths, your border, your cell padding, and so on. And so there's a lot that you can do here to customize the Home tab. Another question coming in from Rachel, if you do something you don't like, is it as easy as Control-Z to undo it? It isn't as easy as Control-Z, which for those of us, Control-Z means undo on your keyboard. If you press Control-Z, it undoes stuff. It's not as easy as Control-Z, but it is pretty easy. When you are in the Home tab and you're playing around and you make a decision like this crazy pink border and you're like, I hate that. If you go to Options, below the Customize button is a version history. We keep the history of your Home tab layout. So if you're like, wait a minute, I did not like the pink border, I can say, let me see what version 11 looked like. Version 11, if I click on the version number there, it'll load and show me what version 11 looked like. That's not it. I'll go a little bit further back. If I go to, let me just back it up to version 9. So you'll see here it says save as version 14. I click on that, OK, and what it does is it replaces the current version with a previous version. Now, if you are in Options Customize and you click this button right here, Restore to Default, that will delete all of your previous versions. This big red button right here that says Restore to Default, don't make the mistake of clicking that, because it wipes all of the previous versions and it resets the layout to a system default layout. And there's no way to undo it. So sometimes you'll be in here playing and you're like, you know, maybe you select a bunch of stuff and you're like, oh shoot, this is terrible. And you're like, whoop, let me just restore it. Don't click that. That's not what that does. If you make a bunch of changes and you're like, whoops, I made a mistake, just click cancel right here. Click cancel, and you'll be able to try again. All right, so that's the Home tab layout. There's one last thing I wanted to show you that I've done in a couple of my own configurations, and that is I like to embed graphics and stuff in my Home tab just to make it look a little prettier. If you've got graphics on your computer, I'm going to put my cursor right here and just, there's my cursor. You can click this paperclip icon, which lets you attach things. And I can click on From My Computer, which will allow me to upload an image from my computer. And let's see, do I have an image that I want to use? I'm humming, so you know that I'm still here. About this one. This is our iMeet Central University banner. Cool. There it is. And after I've uploaded it, if I right-click on the image, I get this little option that says Insert Edit Image, and I can force the dimensions. So I can be like, let's just make this 150 pixels. No, let's do width. Let's make it 350 pixels wide. And it's going to auto-format the height. Oh, it didn't make it any smaller. Could that be 350 pixels wide? That'd be pretty funny. 100? Oh, I think I know what I need to do. I need to highlight it. Whoop. Cancel. Let me do that one more time. Options, Customize, place my cursor, make sure I found it. There it is. And you don't have to type AAA. I type whatever. It just shows me where my cursor is. So when I'm doing that, it's not like a fancy trick. It's just literally me. I can't see where my cursor is. All right, insert more. Select a file. Use this. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just save it. So you can see that if you wanted to put a little graphic, you may decide to create a custom graphic that says something like Marketing Project Workspace, so it looks pretty. Again, this makes the site more pleasing. It's enjoyable. Your team members want to use it because it looks nice. You can embed images. You can also embed, if you go back to Options, Customize, you can type in your own text if you want. Like this is just plain text right here. So maybe you want it to say Recent Activity and Stuff. That little horizontal gray bar is this thing. See this little button right here? It says Insert Horizontal Ruler. That just inserts little bars that might help you separate sections of your Home tab. But you can also create links. Let's see, do I still have that link to? I do. Check this out. Maybe what I want to do is down at the bottom, let me put my cursor down there. There it is. I can include what I like to call hard links, meaning they always point toward the same thing. And I'll create a hard link here to say, view the workload calendar. And I'll highlight it. And I'm going to go up here to where it says Insert Link. And I still have that link handy from that report, so I'm just going to paste that right there. You'll see it asks what's the URL that you want to direct a person to when they click the link, and what's the text that they're going to click on. And then I've got an option here to open the link in a new window, which is handy. I'll click on OK, and I'll do a little bit more formatting. I'm going to go ahead and make that bold. I'm going to make it kind of tiny, and I'm going to stick it in the bottom right-hand corner. Okay. I'll click on Save, and so now a person's looking at this workspace. They're like, oh, let's look at these files. Let's look at the recent activities and discussions. They scroll down, and they're like, oh, look, there's a little link to the workload calendar. And if they click that link down there in the bottom right-hand corner, it opens up a new tab, and it pulls up that calendar. So that's embedding what's known as a hard link in your Home tab. And again, that's just customizing the Home tab, typing in some text and making it a link. So that's a really handy tool. Some people like to create like their own little custom menus. If you wanted to have a menu of things in the top right corner, you can do that as well. Let's now talk about the tabs. We can customize and change the tabs at the top of the workspace. And the reason why we would do this is to enable or disable visibility into features we don't need to use. A workspace administrator can change the tab layout at the top of the workspace by clicking the Settings button and going down to where it says Tab Options. There are two types of tabs in a workspace. There are System tabs and there are Custom tabs. The System tabs are just on-off checkboxes. So if you want to turn on the Database tab, you just check the little box beside Database, and you click on Update in the bottom left-hand corner. And there we go. There's my Database tab. You can turn off a tab, like I can turn off the Files and Discussions tab and click on Update. But as a Workspace administrator, you can still get into the Files and Discussions area by clicking the name of the tab right here. Turning a tab on or off does not delete the contents in that feature. So I don't have a Files and Discussions tab, but I uploaded and created a bunch of folders and stuff. Even though I turn the tab off, it doesn't delete the stuff that's in it. It just hides the tab from your team members. So you're not bothering them with things that they don't need to click on. So if I go back into Tab Options and I want to get into time tracking, I can just click on Time. And it will take me to the time tracking tool. So this is a really nice way for you as a Workspace administrator to maybe check out some features that you don't have currently enabled, but you don't want to be bothering your team members with like, oh, look, there's a time tab. Feel free to go into Settings, Tab Options, and you can use this as your own little navigational tool. Now, every feature in a workspace has a relative web address, which means it's the same address for every workspace. It's kind of weird. But if I hover over these little buttons, if you look down at the very bottom left-hand corner of my screen, and I apologize, I can't zoom in for you right now, but if you look closely in the bottom left corner, down here, watch what happens. You see it says Design Layout 1 / Workspace Directory. If I hover over the Files and Discussions one, it says AV and AC = all. If I hover over Project Management, it says /project/. It's down here. If I hover over Properties, it says /properties. The relative address for each feature is the word that appears at the end of the /properties. This one up here, database, is /dbapp. What does this mean? Why is this important? It's important because your team members may say, I don't like the name of the database tab. I'm not going to use iMeet Central because it says database and I don't like that. Okay, well, what would you like it to say? And they say, I wish it said record holder. Okay, great. Well, check this out. You know the relative address for database is /dbapp. I can find it also if I go to the database tab. It's right here. So I can go into Settings, Tab Options, and I can create a custom tab. Custom tabs allow you to add your own tabs to the top and have them point to whatever. So I can click on Create Custom Tab, and I can name it Record Holder. And where it says Link, I'm just going to type in the word dbapp. That's it. Click on Create. I now have a tab called Record Holder, and I have a tab called Database. They both point toward the same thing. They point to /dbapp. I can click on either one. It goes the same thing. I can then go into Tab Options, and I can turn off the Database tab. Goodbye. Click on Update. And now you go back to your end user and you say, hey, I took your feedback. I thought it was great. Let's get rid of the Database tab. There's now a tab called Record Holder. It does the same thing. That uses a custom tab, and it refers to a relative URL, this word, dbapp. So quick update here. I could go into custom tabs and I can replace all my system tabs. Calendar, so maybe I want to call this schedule. The relative link is calendar. Maybe I want to do, instead of the files and discussions tab, I want to do data. Maybe that's the tab. And the relative is folder/0/. And the last one here, I'll do, I'll just leave it at that. So we got data, record holder, and schedule. I'll click on update. I now have 3 custom tabs. One of them points towards the files and discussions area. One of them points towards record holder, which is a database, and the other one is schedule. It points toward the calendar. So custom tabs can be used to create an interface that your team finds more appealing. Custom tabs always appear after your system tabs. So if I go back to tab options, you'll notice that the layout up here, it says home, project management, and then calendar, people, data. If I were to turn off calendar and people, and I click on update, you'll see it says home, project management, data, record holder, schedule. These are my custom ones. It's impossible for me to put a custom tab before a system tab. So home and project management will always come first. I can rearrange my custom tabs though. I can drag and drop this to say, I want it to say schedule, and then record holder, and then data. And I'll click on update. And you can see that those tabs rearrange accordingly up here, but I can never put them in front of a system tab. If you want to put it in front of a system tab, you've got to replace these system tabs with custom tabs. Rachel asks, wouldn't it get confusing that the tab name has a custom name, but the system information within the tab says something else? Yeah, it can. It can absolutely get confusing, which is why it's important for you, for us as administrators, to take that feedback from team members and say, you know what, I know you want it to say, you know, tasks and to-dos, but we think that it should be called project management because that's what we're used to it being called. So yes, it can get confusing. I won't say that it doesn't get confusing from time to time. I go into Workspaces and I see all these crazy tabs and they don't make any sense to me. So it's smart for you to ask those questions if you decide you want to go in and create custom tabs. Make sure that you are creating custom tabs that your team better understands. Here's a custom tab that I've seen that is kind of nifty. If I go to Create Workspace and I copy that link, copy, and then I go back to my Workspace and go to Custom Tabs. Let me get rid of these custom tabs. So I'm just going to click these little trash can icons. Get rid of that one. Get rid of this one. And I'll just rename. I'll rename the last one. For team members that create a lot of workspaces, I've seen this, a custom tab called Create Workspace, and it points toward the Workspace Creation Wizard. How crazy is that? So you're in the middle of a workspace, and in the middle of it, you're like, all right, I got to create a workspace. Rather than making 2 clicks, Create Workspace, I just create 1 click, Create Workspace. It takes me right to the Creation Wizard. So those custom tabs can point to things outside of the workspace, but they should always point to things inside iMeet Central. So just be mindful of that. If you create a custom tab that points toward like a Google Doc, that can sometimes create weird permission things. All right, so what's the best way to implement changes to a workspace layout? If you're doing the Home tab or you're doing custom tabs, whatever it is, I highly recommend the best thing to do if you're going to play with layouts is to create a workspace and play in that workspace. If you create a layout that you love and you're like, this is it, if you go to Options, Customize, and you go to the HTML mode, whether or not you've used custom HTML, it doesn't matter. Go to the HTML mode. You can copy this code. Copy. So I'm going to go copy. Click on OK. Click on Cancel. You can go to another workspace Maybe I want to go to my Macy's 2018 website redesign workspace. Go to Options, Customize, and if you haven't guessed it already, go to HTML mode and just replace the code. Delete, right-click, paste, OK, save. The database application blocks will display information local to the workspace that you're in. So this is the recent activity for this workspace, not the one I copied the layout from. Now you may have to go in and do a little bit more tweaking, like I got to re-embed that image, but one of the easiest ways to play around and make changes to your current design is play in a sandbox environment where your users do not have access. Ready, go into your other workspaces and just copy-paste that code. Now your other alternative, and this is sort of where we wrap up our lesson for today, is if you create a layout and you said, this is the best layout I've ever made. I love this. I want to use this every time I create a new workspace. You can convert this into a template. I first need to go in and repair this block. See where it says there are no records in this folder? That's wrong. So let me go ahead and just make a couple quick updates. I'm going to turn on some of my system tabs again. I want files and discussions. I want calendar. And let me go into custom tabs and get rid of those custom ones. So I'm going to go to custom tabs and click this trash can icon. Get rid of that. So I don't want any custom tabs. I need to, on the home tab, I wanted a list of folders right here and it disappeared. I got to fix that. So if I go to files and discussions, I'll see that there are 6 folders. Let me go back to my home tab. I'm going to go to options, customize. I'm going to erase this application block, this files application block, because it doesn't work. So I'm going to select it and click backspace. Goodbye. And then I'm going to insert a folder application block. So to do that, I'm going to go to Insert More, go to my Files application blocks. I want it to be a file list, and I want it to be called Project Folders. It asks me what folder I want to display in the block, and I'm going to select the parent folder, this one. So I'm going to select the parent folder, and then I'm going to check this box that says Show Subfolders, and that will show me a list of all the folders at a parent level in this workspace. I want to sort it alphabetically. I want to show a maximum of 25 folders. That's fine. The size, I'm going to make it thin. Whenever you see this thing size, wide or thin, it's asking you, do you want to see a lot of stuff or do you want to see like a little stuff, if that makes any sense. I just want to see a list of the folders, so I'm going to say thin. So I get those little icons. And I have to check one of these options, but I don't want to see a bunch of files. I just want to see folders. But you have to pick one. So I'm going to pick this one, Saved Web Pages, because people don't use that a whole lot. So I'm just going to check that one box, and I'm going to click on Insert, and I'm going to click on Save. And I should now have a folder tree on my left side. Okay. So I like this layout. I don't want to copy-paste the code into all my current workspaces, but I do want to use this layout for any new project. So I'm going to convert this workspace into a template. I'm going to go up here to where it says Settings, and I'm going to go down to General Settings. This is the settings area for this workspace. Workspace administrators have access to this. This is where you can rename the workspace. I'm going to go ahead and rename it. I'm going to call it, let's call it Workspace Template version 3.0. Version 30, why not? I forgot a period, but we'll go with it. All right, I come on down, and you'll notice that there's a radio style button right here. It says make this workspace available as a template. I'm going to change that from no to yes. That's it. I'll pick my little icon. I'm going to beat some of you to a question. No, we don't have the ability to add our own custom icons. I wish we did. I've been asking our product team for it, but you've got all these ones you can pick from. So there's some cool ones in here. I'll use this talk bubble. That's cool. And all right, I'm going to click on Update. When you convert a workspace into a template and you go to create a new workspace, your template is available in the Workspace Creation Wizard. Select your template, call it whatever you want. I'll call this the IMCU template demonstration. I got to put this in a group. I'll put it in the CD University Workspace group, and I'll click on Create Workspace. And when I create a workspace using that template, I get that layout. I get the tabs, I get the application blocks, I get the folders. It comes in blank. If I go into Files and Discussions, I'll just have the folders and the files that are in the template itself. And then I can just continually create workspaces using this template if I like this layout. Now, if you need to make changes to a workspace template, you can do so if you're a company administrator. Company administrators can go into Company Setup, and there is a Templates tab right here. And this is where you can manage task and milestone templates, which is project management stuff. But here are my workspace templates. Here it is, Workspace Template version 30. And I can click this pencil icon right here. And that will take me back into the template itself. You'll see it says right here, Workspace Template version 30 is a workspace template. And I've got my tabs. And if I click into these tabs, I'm making changes to the template. So right now, this workspace template, it's got a bunch of files in it. It's got 4 files. I don't want them in workspaces that I create using this template, so I got to throw them away. So I'm going to throw these away. I'm going to empty the trash. I'm going to go into tasks and milestones, make sure that there's nothing in here. Oh, there are a couple tasks. Get rid of these. When you delete things from a template, by the way, if you delete something from a template or you make changes to a template, you are not going to be making any changes to workspaces using that template. So don't be afraid to go into a workspace template and make changes. It's okay. If you delete something, you're not going to impact any active projects. It only will affect new workspaces created moving forward. So now that I've cleaned some of this stuff out, I got rid of some files that were in here, I got rid of some tasks. If I were to go create a workspace using that template, so I'll use that template and I'll click on IMCU template demo 2. And I click on my workspace group. Great, I'll click on create workspace. I created a workspace using this template after I've emptied everything out. And so now this workspace, whenever I create one using that template, it comes in and it is bare bones. There's nothing in it. This is a neat trick. There's a trick hidden in here for those of you who have ever said, I really wish every time a workspace was created, there was a templated creative brief in it. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, if you haven't put 1 and 2 together yet, you can do that by uploading a document into the workspace template. So if you go into the workspace template, if you go to Company Setup, you go to the Templates tab, you go to Workspace Templates, and you edit the template. If you put a file in here, you're going to get that same file in every single workspace you create using that template. So that's just a neat trick I've heard teams ask about. Can I create a workspace and have files in there already? Yes, you can. All right. So let's wrap this up. What are our top 5 design tips? The first is just know the basic fundamentals. Remember, you want your workspaces to be usable. You want them to be desirable. You want things to be easily found. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. The next tip is thou shalt follow the rule of 3. If you're ever wondering, like, well, what's a good way to do a layout? The simplest thing to do is to think of the top 3 things that you need on that Home tab and make those your highlight. Remember that people traditionally typically read top to bottom, left to right. So put your most important stuff in the top left corner. Put your second most important thing in the top right corner, and then everything else that's secondary put down below. The fourth tip is that consistency is crucial. So use templates. Create a workspace layout that you want to use over and over again. Template that workspace so that your team can always find things no matter what project they're in. The last tip here is that informed change is a very good thing. So remember, any changes you make to your design, go to your team and ask them if they like it. And if they don't, that's okay. You know, we don't want to take things personally. We just want to take that feedback, see if we can make an improvement. Anything that you implement based on user feedback is going to go a long way with your team. So that wraps up our presentation. We're coming in right at the hour mark. Go to help.imeetcentral.com. You can search for any of the things that we talked about today. You can find a lot of great guides and videos and so on. I want to thank you all for joining me today for iMeet Central University. Keep an eye out for future notifications for upcoming courses. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your week.